Hi, my name is Brandie Paterakis, and I'm the owner of Blue Bee Counseling Services. I'm a mother and wife who is passionate about life and has found joy in helping others improve their mental health. The goal of this podcast is not only to provide enriching entertainment, but to help others in their pathway to have a more fulfilling life. This in no way is a replacement for therapy. Follow us on this journey of mental health awareness. Blue Bee Counseling Services now presents this podcast, Therapist Table Talk. Hi, welcome to Therapist Table Talk. My name is Brandie Paterakis from Blue Bee Counseling Services, located here in South Jordan, Utah. We are so excited that you're joining us today. We're going to be talking about something really fabulous. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and introduce you to some of my friends that I have with me. Miranda, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Miranda Neider. I am an intern, do my MSW, so Master's in Social Work. And I'm just really excited to be working with Brandie and to be working at Blue Bee.
That's awesome. We're excited to have her. Jodie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Jodie Lybarger. I'm also an intern with Brandie at Blue Bee, also pursuing my MSW. And I'm really excited to be here and to chat about some important things today.
And then we have, last but not least, we have Tami. Tami's been on our little fun podcast before. Tami, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, my name is Tami. I am also pursuing my MSW, so my Master's in Social Work, and I'm an intern at Blue Bee Counseling Services as well. So, all right.
This is fun. So we have a lot of interns here today. I'm super excited because part of working with me at Blue Bee Counseling is that we have all sorts of fun different requirements for interns. And one of them is being on the podcast, which they're both all excited and nervous about. So judge lightly, have a lot of fun with us today. We're going to laugh, we're going to tell experiences, and we're going to talk about something kind of heavy. I mean, and when I say heavy, it's heavy because all of us deal with it. And are you ready for the word? You've probably already seen it because you definitely clicked on here. And so people pleasing. People pleasing can tend to be a lot of us who are navigating through life and want to, do the thing where it just makes it so much easier to just say yes and to go along with the flow or do that thing that someone's telling us. And I find that super interesting because as I was kind of thinking about my own experiences, this one kind of struck a big chord with me. I was like, whoa, I think I'm kind of a people pleaser. Like, I definitely want to make people happy. I enjoy making people happy. I like it. I feel like there's some sort of a balance there though. And sometimes I kind of wonder if I go into the place of like recognizing that it's harmful and hurtful people pleasing versus when it can be a great gift to give another person of people pleasing. And sometimes when I'm talking to my clients in my office, I have to recognize that sometimes we do this pendulum swing where we're over here and we people please and we say yes and we do everything that anybody ever wants us to do because it's just so much easier than saying no, because no can be so scary or so hard because people look at you and go, really? You're not going to do that thing? That's rude. And I don't want to feel like I'm rude, right? But then also putting that sometimes it puts me in jeopardy of my own wants, desires, and things that I have plans to do. And so I take these people from over here where they people please on everything. And sometimes you have to do this pendulum swing where you come over and you say no to everything in order for us to get ourselves back in the balance of saying yes and no. When is it harmful and hurtful? And when it can be a gift that we give other people? And I think that this is a great thing. So if we don't have to pendulum swing all the way over here to always say no about everything in order to get us with the words to use and to be able to use the words no, and that doesn't work for me, or using other words to figure out how to be able to stand up for ourselves, then let's just go right to the middle. Wouldn't that be awesome if we could just go right to the middle and just start there where we can like stop the people pleasing, but also give gifts sometimes when we feel like it's really important to do so.
And that takes a lot of self-awareness.
It does.
And practice.
It does, which is why I think a lot of people really struggle with it. So then I have to give the initiative of like, you can't say yes to anything right now. Like we're going to go 2 days and we are going to become like the yes man and become now the no man, And so I just want you to say no to everything. And I know that this is going to be super hard, but we've got to practice and start somewhere. So I'm interested to know, what do you guys kind of think about this? Has there been periodical moments, maybe that's the wrong word, but where you've had to people please and you're like, ooh, that might have been like not very helpful? Like more in the realms of like helpful or hurtful.
I think it's easy in family relationships to always say yes, to feel like that's your role, that's your purpose, that's the expectation. And so people pleasing in family, I think for me, is one of the struggles.
That is really hard. It's hard to do. I mean, I'm not saying this lightly. Like, I recognize very well that it can be really hard. I mean, I remember my mother being like, hey, I really need you to come over and help me set up my house. And I'm saying this, Mom, I love you. Like, if you're watching this, you know,
We definitely do.
I love you. But there are times when Mom's like, hey, I need you to do this thing, right? And you're like, ooh, I know that if I say no right now, she's gonna get that look on her face and she's gonna be like, I'm doing this for you, you know. And my mom's so kind. Like, she doesn't know that she's doing that, but there's that look that all moms give where they're like, really? Why would you have to do? That's so much more important than this thing that I'm doing for you, right? And I'm like, well, I need to go get my toes done. Like, I need an hour for toes, or I have a friend that's really struggling, and I need to meet up for lunch with her. And that look of disappointment that happens on their faces when you have to share that information.
That hurts.
And then I'm gonna have to like break it with somebody, and it's so much easier to do it with the other person that's not face to face with you, and you can do it through a text rather than in face and in person. So I'm of course gonna break it off with that other person, and then I feel disingenuous, right? Because I set up that thing that I need to do. And so setting up that boundary at first to say, hey, I'm planning on spending the whole day with you. I'm so grateful for the time that you've given me to help me, but I need an hour in between here. And this is like non-negotiable. Like, I really need to do this in a kind way.
And the thing with that is when you have healthy boundaries for yourself, you can model them for other people.
Right.
And they can see what that looks like, and maybe you can help them to create healthy boundaries for their life and in their relationships when you're modeling them for yourself.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's true. Let's kind of maybe dive into that a little bit. I mean, we definitely have the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? We know that we go into this mode when we're feeling like we are not in a safe territory. When there's a trauma response, there's something that kind of comes up that makes us go into fight, flight, freeze, and the new word is fawn. Like, that's the kind of the new one that we're finding where we people please our way through it, right? Whatever you need, how can I help you? How do I need to do this? I have even caught myself doing that. I found that when somebody doesn't like me or I can feel that pushback, I'll tend to go into that fawning, type of mode of like, how can I help you? What do you need? Anything that you need, I'm happy to do for you, and to really set some boundaries with myself and be like, ooh, why am I doing that? What do I need from them? Why is it so important for me to be liked by them or to not disappoint them? And usually it has some sort of trauma response attached to it, or some sort of core value that's attached to it that says, there's something a lot bigger here at stake from your past that caused you to become the way that you are. And I like to bring those into therapy, and then I get on my like instructor or my investigator hat, and I'm like, let's find out what that is. Tell me a time when you felt, and then they'll go into like the first thing that comes up into their mind, and we do trauma work in that, and it really is helpful. But based on that, we really have to learn how to set boundaries, right? Like, besides the trauma work, which we're not going to really go into too much today on trauma work, but if you do feel that and you don't want to deal with that sort of an issue, you're really struggling setting the boundaries or changing, then this could be a really great mode, is to get into some therapy and let's do some trauma work where we can help you ask questions to find out that thing from your past that's causing you to do that thing that you're doing. Or we have boundaries. Let's talk about boundaries, Jodie.
Boundaries are so important, and it's really hard to set boundaries.
You know
we
what?
all know it.
Someone said one time, they said, we set boundaries because we want to have a relationship with that person, not because we don't want to have a relationship with that person.
Right. I mean, boundaries can enhance relationships. They can make them healthier and more meaningful even. And I think that we default to the opposite, where we say, oh, if we don't set any boundaries, then my relationship is going to be perfect because I'm always going to be doing what they want me to do. But that that fosters resentment on both sides. And eventually, if you continue to not set boundaries and to not enforce boundaries, it's going to build and build and build, and then there's going to be an explosive moment.
Oh yeah.
That can be that can just fracture the relationship.
Tami, tell me, have you ever had that happen before? Like, you have teenage and adult children. Like, tell me about boundaries you've had to set with them. Because I know why you're thinking about one, because I'm totally putting you on the spot. She's like, I hate you, Brandie. But
There's no
like
hate.
Miranda
There's
too.
no
But
hate.
I mean, Miranda has twin boys, right?
Twin boys.
Twin boys. I mean, so there's going to be something there that I would have a little bit of like maybe a little bit of issues with wanting to please my husband or wanting to please my children in that, and not setting the boundaries like good enough where it causes a little bit of resentment. Like, how many times do I have to change the diaper before you're going to step in and do it? You know what I mean? Or at the bottle, or with Tami, like, and me, I have teenage kids and adult children where it's like, they're like, Mom, I need you really badly to make sure that you're available on this day. And I'm like, that's tomorrow. And I already have like plans, and you're really angry at me. I can tell. Ooh, you know?
No, I think for me, the boundaries, the difficult boundaries, have been in including new, like when my children get married and they include, they bring a new son-in-law or they bring a daughter-in-law into the family. And then I have to figure out what that relationship looks like again. And what boundaries do they have so I'm not crossing their boundaries. And what's important to them versus what's important to me, and showing love. And there's just so many parts to that. But for me, it's the new son and daughter-in-laws that I really, now that I know, I think education has really taught me a lot. But I feel like now that I know and understand the importance of what those boundaries are and what their purpose is, it's not to keep them out. It's to bring them closer and to have us both understand each other in a better way. So again, I'm not causing hurt and they're not causing hurt. So.
I love that. And don't you feel like it's also that word self-awareness too?
For sure.
Like awareness of our family dynamic. And I kind of do this thing where I expect, since I have this rule or this boundary, that everybody should have it. And we have to go about it of like, that's actually not true, and calling out myself and being like, ooh, Brandie, just because I raised my children this way doesn't mean that we should raise that their children or their parents raised them that way in coming into our family. And so like having to navigate it into a new way, I think has been really helpful in like seeing like, okay, they do things just a little bit different, and that's not wrong. It's just really bad for us. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Like, no, it's just, it's inconvenient and it's uncomfortable to have to change the way that you do things. And is there a mode of people pleasing in that? Right? Of recognizing, when is it a gift that I can give my new son-in-law or my new daughter-in-law the ability to change up something and do something a little different, when also setting boundaries and holding lines and fostering a sense of awareness and connection and community and change.
And one thing that I've noticed too, at least with people pleasing, it's when I'm people pleasing, it's about me. I'm focused on myself and what I want to do or what I want to give, not necessarily what they're interested in receiving, or maybe they don't even receive love the way that I'm wanting to give it. So I'm working extra time, overtime to please them, when in reality, is it really?
Okay, so there we go. We're going to give Tami the gold star for the day. She gets the gold star. If you watch some of my other ones, in the first 5 minutes, Tami gets the gold star. But Jodie gets a gold star because she's very prepared today too. And Miranda's about to pull one. She has twin boys, and so she automatically receives one as well. But like, she gets no sleep and had to make it here. But what we do have is, I think that is a beautiful way to differentiate the two different ones, right? When it becomes unhealthy and hurtful versus gifts that we give, and I think that that's a beautiful way to like kind of look at it. Like, if I am giving this gift, is it harmful for me? Then maybe that's a boundary that I need to set that could be harmful and hurtful, or for someone else. And a gift that I can give is when it's not about me and it's that selfish motion that I can put in towards giving that gift to help out another person and apply like connection and creativity and something different and authenticity, right? Huh, I kind of like that. All right, let's go into some boundaries. Let's talk about boundaries.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, kind of piggybacking just off of that really quick is I think when we have those moments where we get a request from someone and we don't know, like, am I doing this for myself? Is this what I really want to do? Am I just saying yes to please the other person? Am I saying yes to please the other person because it makes me feel good? Like, kind of sorting through all of those thoughts and feelings about it. I think one of the things that we can do in those moments is to kind of take a step back, if possible, say that you need some space to make a decision. You're like, this isn't a no, it's not a yes right now, it's not a no right now, it's an I need to think about it. Let me step away from the situation for a minute and really assess where we're at, and then go back to that person.
I love that.
And make it, like, once you've evaluated where you are, then you can give an authentic answer, what you know you really want to do and why you're doing it.
Oh, it takes
right?
the pressure off
It,
that
I love
moment,
it
that.
takes
too.
the pressure off the moment.
And I like that idea because I think it also puts us in a place where we can say, okay, if I'm going to say yes to this, then I have to remove the resentment that I might feel if I say yes. It's not fair to that person to say yes and then be really angry or upset with them because we said it yes because we really didn't want to, but we did because we felt pressured into it. And then that other person's like, but I didn't know that you were feeling pressured into it. Like, so sorry that you felt that way. But if you would have told me, I would have said, hey, I've got 4 other people lined up around the corner willing to do that, but you took it on yourself to feel the pressure. And so being able to see that and recognize that and say, okay, wait a second, hold on. I'm going to choose yes. And because I choose yes, I'm going to release the anxiety or the depression from that.
I love that. Yeah.
That's really good. I like that.
But boundaries, there are a few different kinds of boundaries that we can set when we get requests from people. We can kind of categorize them, which might help us to be more specific in how we respond to things. Like, is this something I need to set a physical boundary for? Is it something I need to set an emotional boundary for? We also have time boundaries or material boundaries, right?
Ooh.
So there's...
Give us an example of like a material boundary.
Yeah, so a material boundary could be something like if someone comes to you and asks to borrow some money or to borrow your car, and you don't really feel like you want to do it, but you know that you have this history of people pleasing, but you really want to say no. One thing that you can do is set, like, be very specific with what you say. Just be really intentional. You don't have to use a lot of words to say no. You can just be really intentional about it.
You don't have to
You
give
don't
like
have to give
bunch of
like
examples.
a
Or
whole
defend
like
yourself.
novel
Yes. Yeah.
about like why you.
Well, this is why I'm not doing it. Is
Yeah.
because like
I mean,
so the girl next door down the street has like all this stuff. Like you're
we
like
do that though.
We do.
that. We
We
have
do.
this like tendency to over-explain ourselves, especially if we have a history of people pleasing. We feel the need to over-explain so the other person like knows.
Do you think that's a way for us to find out if we're people pleasers? Is to look and see if we like
probably.
over-explain?
Oh, yeah.
Like if
I
you
do.
over-explain, I do too. It's like, oh well, let me explain this to you so you can have like empathetic or an empathy for my situation, and then you'll be on board with
And
why.
you don't think I'm a bad person.
Yeah, you don't think I'm a bad
And
person.
so the
Yeah.
whole backstory of why I'm saying no, because if you don't, then you'll think I'm a terrible person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I do this thing, so I have a lot of wedding supplies. I know this is what happens when you start doing weddings for friends. You accumulate a lot of their stuff that they don't want anymore. And I'm like, oh, well, I have a wedding that I'm helping a friend with next week, so I'll just take your stuff. Maybe they'll want to use it, right? And I have this huge garage full of wedding supplies now. And people will call me up, hey, do you have those wood easels? I have these wood easels that are beautiful. People are going to be like, hey, I have a wedding. Call her. It's wood easels. I do. And can we borrow those wood easels? And I would say, yes, of course, you can borrow them. And I'd send them out, and then they would never come back. And they would never come back. And then if they did, they'd come back in disrepair or in bad shape. And so now I had to be like, I have no problem with you borrowing them. In fact, you can borrow them for free, but, and this is setting a boundary, but if you don't like the state that they're in, you need to be in charge of repairing them. And if you don't like, and then I need them to be brought back in a better state than they were when I gave them to you. Like that's the only payment that I need back is like if the little easel stand breaks off, I need you to repair that and bring it back. And then I'm also gonna need it by next Wednesday. Like I'll set a date, even though I don't have nothing. It's like, hey, next Wednesday. And if that doesn't work for you, call me. We'll reschedule. But at least I have a date and a plan. I can't tell you how much stuff I bought in IKEA lanterns. Probably 2 to 3 times now because I don't know where they're at, and I'll promise them out to people, and then it's the day before the wedding, and I'm like, where are those like easel or the IKEA lanterns? And then someone's like, and then my husband's looking for them. All my kids are looking for them. We can't find them in our many storage places that we put them, and so I'm running to IKEA to buy lanterns, which is about $200 to $300 for me. To buy lanterns
for someone to borrow for free.
And not return.
Yeah. It's fun. And if you're one of those people out there, just so you know, thank you for getting all my stuff back that did. I really appreciate it. Oh, you know how it's always your family and friends that watch your podcast. They're like, thanks, I'm not talking about you.
You know who you are.
You know who you are. Yeah, and you probably better be watching this. Just kidding. Okay, other boundaries. So we have physical boundaries.
We have physical
Oh
boundaries.
wait, there was material boundaries. That's where we last.
I mean that's an example, and that's an example of a boundary, right? Like,
oh, good.
I would be happy to share this thing, but I need it back by a specific date, right? Or I need it back in this condition. Like, that's still a boundary, even though you're saying yes. You're saying yes and.
There's
right?
yes and expectations.
Expectation.
Yes.
Right. It's about setting an expectation for the other person, and for yourself.
Can we talk about one? I just really want to talk about one. I know all of you out there, and I'm just going to give a little disclaimer. We're about to talk about sex boundaries. And if there's children in the room or you're feeling uncomfortable, this is the time to like run to your phone and turn off or however you want. Maybe they need to hear it too, and that's fine. But sexual boundaries, I think, is one that is really important, that infringes upon our day. I don't feel like it's talked about well enough in schools. And so I think that this is something that's really important that we talk about, is boundaries with sex. Who would have known we were talking about boundaries with sex today?
So important.
I know it is.
I'm
the consent.
I am
right?
on board.
Yes.
On board this train.
Me too. Are we all on board this train right now? We're jumping on, and the conductor is Tami. I'm just kidding, Tami.
What do you want to know? Where do you want to go with this?
I'm just kidding. I'm so sorry. I have to. It's part of my job requirements that I tease and harass Tami. So
Just
any
Tami,
and all.
Okay, so sexual boundaries.
Special, what can I say?
Here's some really important concepts to think about. We do not talk enough to our children and to ourselves about boundaries with sex. I have many clients that come into my office that will say, I really don't like that me and my husband do this thing. But I feel like I have to because I make him feel bad that we don't, or it's something that he really, really wants. And I think that this is something for us to stop and kind of be aware of, that you're not a bad person. There is not a sex booklet on exactly what you are supposed to do as a couple or as a married partner or as a partner in in any kind of relationship. Like, you are the one who writes that booklet on what you want. And this is really important for us to figure out, like, what is it that I like? What is it that my partner likes? And then coming up with some non-negotiables in there.
Like, meet in the middle.
Right. And sometimes I think it can be really healthy for us to stretch our boundaries and to try new things and to do things that are uncomfortable or adding in some vulnerability. But there are some things that are, I've tried that, I don't like that, it's time for me not to do that anymore. And, or I don't know how to say no in that, or to set that boundary. And so I think that this is really interesting. If there's some words, and maybe let's go into some of the words, if you don't mind, under the sexual boundaries that you have on your list here. Let's talk about some of those things that are on there.
Yeah, I think that, it's important with sexual boundaries, and just kind of before we dive into that, especially if you're just starting out with setting boundaries in this way, if it's not a heck yes, it's a heck no, right? And then from there we can kind of work on, okay, well, maybe it's not a heck no, maybe it's a I'm interested in trying this, and this is the support that I need.
Right.
This is the help that I need to feel safe while I'm trying
And
whatever
let's
this is that I'm
communicate.
uncomfortable with.
Yeah, I think the communication is like honestly the biggest thing. It's like before you even start anything, you set expectations. Like, what are your expectations for our sexual relationship? Like, what do you need out of it? What do I need out of it? And then you can kind of like create a list if you want of like, these are some things I would like to try, or these are some fantasies I may have. And you can kind of go through together and be like, I'm comfortable with this. And I'm not comfortable with this, maybe not right now, maybe not ever, but right now it's a no, but it's not a forever no, because a couple years down the line, you might want to try it. But it's all about a communication of, okay, this is what I'm expecting, and how can we kind of meet in the middle to make sure that we're both satisfied, that both of our expectations are met, but not at the sacrifice of the other person.
Right. And I think that's really a great way to say that. In fact, I kind of think that the one thing that kind of came up for me is like if I have a client that comes in my office and is talking about some boundaries that they set in their relationship and their sexual relationship, and then the partner says, okay, I understand that it's no right now, and I'm okay with that, but then they come back next week and ask again, or even I've even had it where it's a couple months later, that client has felt very rejected and really disheartened, because then they feel that pressure that kind of comes. It's not meant to be pressure. The other person has good intentions, but because they're asking in a certain time frame, it causes a lot of disheartened and a little bit of trust that kind of breaks down, and safety issues for the partner that makes them feel like, ooh, you're not a trusted individual because you keep on asking for this thing that I said no on. And so now I don't feel like I trust you, and you don't have my best intentions at heart. So like maybe establishing some boundaries, like when would you feel like it would be appropriate for us to enter these back into communication, these things,
Or maybe the person that said no brings it up when they are more comfortable with it, of like kind of setting that expectation of, right now it's a no, and I will bring it up if it's a yes. Or setting a timeline of like, okay, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 weeks from now, like who knows? It's all depending on the partner and what they are needing and what they feel comfortable with.
It's all part of compatibility, right, too? And this is why it's so important for us to have these conversations before we enter into a committed relationship with another person. Is like, if you have expectations that you want to have sex every single night, or have a sexual relationship with someone at this way, including this style or this thing, then that's something that we really need to connect with on that basis, and not just assume that that person might be willing to jump all in with you on that. And so, because if that's something that's a non-negotiable for you, and you really have to have that, and you want it and desire it, and that comes forefront, then other people's emotions or feelings, or their needs and their wants, then that's something that you really need to talk to that person about.
And I think that this is the world according to Jodie. I think that the dating stages of a relationship are the perfect, this is where you want to discuss these things. It doesn't matter if you actually engage in anything at that point, right? But this is where you discuss your expectations, what you like, what you don't like, all of that. That's how that's a huge compatibility thing in a relationship, any kind of long-term relationship. This is one area where you want to make sure that you have compatibility, you have similarities in at least some ways. And if you wait until like way down the road to talk about those things, you're already going to be so connected on so many other levels that it's just, again, it's a recipe for resentment. So I think that the dating stages, the early stages of relationships, sometimes it might be considered a little bit taboo, but I think that's where you want to kind of discuss these things and make sure that for the future, you will be compatible in these ways.
I love this. That we're having this conversation about this and talking about this. It really takes a lot of vulnerability to discuss and talk about sex. It's probably one of the number one things that comes into my office that people aren't expecting to talk about, that we talk a lot about. Probably about 95% of the issues that are brought in by women, some of them tend to center around this topic. And so this is like really fascinating that a lot of women are not happy in their sexual relationships with their partner. And so, and a lot of men are not happy in their sexual relationships with their partner. I don't see as many men, so I can't speak to them as much, but the ones that I do have would love a lot more and would like a lot more connectedness and don't know how to get their partner on board with that, you know? And so saying the right things, using different kinds of words, making the person feel loved and needed and wanted, not physically, but emotionally, you know, and
that's a language that they just, that I would,
Yes.
I would have to say in my personal experience that a lot of the, you know, my sons and my husband especially, that is something that we've had to work on, these emotional connections through language, like communication, because communication, they speak a different language, and we're talking about, you know, intimacy, and with intimacy, they use this intimate connection to build the same things that we use. We talk with our friends, and right, we interact in a different way to build connection. And so they use this physical part, we use, you know, talking and back rubs and gifts and hugs and snuggles and, you know, romantic dates, and that builds connection for us. So we also need to remember that we speak different languages, and to give them that space to be able to learn our language, and then we in turn have to learn their language.
Can I plug a resource?
I love this.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's this website, it's called OMG Yes. I don't know if you've heard of it.
That's kind of cool.
OMG Yes.
Oh, yes.
OMGYES.
Oh, I love that.
OMG Yes. And it's a resource that you and your partner can use to kind of understand where your wants, needs, fantasies, whatever, where they align, and where like, ooh, I'm really not comfortable with that. So it gives you like situations, fantasies, roles, whatever, and you either say yes, no, or maybe.
Okay.
And then your partner can do the same thing, and then you can kind of evaluate, oh wow, we're both totally on the same page on this thing, and we never thought, because we never talked about it. Or like, oh wow, like this is, I'm really into this, and you said you're really not into it, let's talk about that. You know, or like, oh, maybe we could try this thing. Like, we're both kind of on the fence. Like, let's try it. Why not? You know? So I think that could be a really helpful resource for couples to look into.
I love that.
Start conversations.
Let's definitely dive into, you know, one thing. Let me just clarify really fast. I said that 95% of the people come into my office that's the issue that they brought in. I misinterpreted that or missaid that. It's not 95% of the women that come into my office do not bring in sex as the forefront thing, but they bring in, and they usually have an issue about sex somehow, 95% of the women. So it's not what's brought in, but they usually have some sort of an issue with some sort of facet with sexual intimacy. And so I think that this is such an important thing, which is why I wanted to stick some time on it, of consent, right? And I love the whole thing about like sex is like tea. Is it sex is like tea, I believe? And there's like a funny little video that's online. There's an explicit and a non-explicit version, so you can choose the one that you prefer. But it's really quite eye-opening when I showcase that little video to some of my clients to explain to them what consent looks like. Like, we don't force our partner into it, and sometimes our partner may not say yes, but they may not say no, right? And being kind of aware of that too. And so setting some boundaries around that and I think the boundaries really lie, and you tell me what you guys think, but I think the boundaries really lie around self-awareness. What is it that I need and I want? Awareness of what my partner needs and what they want. What parts am I willing to give as a gift? And what parts am I not willing to give that's a non-negotiable? What parts can I talk about and be vulnerable about and with that partner? And then setting in the pathway of communicating appropriately about those things with our partner. And then from there, and especially I'm going to put another plug in for like ethical non-monogamy, is if that's something that you're tampering in with and looking into, to make sure that is one of the places that is on the rise these days, but can have some very hard circumstances and situations if not talked about very deeply with your partner. And I'm talking about firm boundaries, that nothing is, if we have yeses and we have nos, that when we go somewhere and do something and it's on the no list, it stays on the no list, even if both partners say yes when it's on the no list. And so like making sure that we hold very firm boundaries, and there's a whole other tons of things that we can talk about with that, but that is just one thing that I wanted to put a plug in there as far as boundaries go with ethical non-monogamy.
Very firm boundaries and very open conversation with your partner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, how are we doing? Do we feel like we've kind of explored some boundaries? Is there any hiccups that we might find with boundaries that we should be aware of?
Well, I think the hiccup with that is that there will be hiccups.
Oh, I love that, Jodie.
Yeah. You're gonna, like, it's okay to struggle with setting boundaries. You're gonna set boundaries and you're gonna be like, oh man, I wish I didn't set that boundary. You can reevaluate it. You can do something, you're like, man, I wish I would have set a boundary on that, or I broke my own boundary. I said yes to something, I previously set a boundary. That's okay. You're gonna take a couple steps back, but practicing and like saying these boundaries to yourself in the mirror, even before you have to set them with another person, will help it feel more natural and feel more normal.
Thank you for joining us here on Therapist Table Talk. We loved having you with us as we talked about boundaries, as we talked about people pleasing, and join us next time as we talk about safety and all sorts of fun things about Halloween and mental health, and any other holiday maybe you could add in there as well. So thanks for joining us.